Four Corners, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico talks this afternoon. 6 of us, and I guess I'll start it off. This is like the 15th year of the Wood Rat expedition in southeast Utah. We've gotten nothing back for the last 3 years of work, so I can't follow up with stuff we've talked about before. Sure, you'll have it slow. Anyway, I visited a number of places this year as usual, and then major work last month out in Cedar Mesa in southeast Utah. Worked earlier in the year after the last PACO conference at the San Miguel Chapel, 2 blocks off the plaza at Santa Fe. Built in 1610, burned down during the 1680 revolt, rebuilt in 1710, and they were doing some renovation of rooms along the side that had never been sampled or mapped or any of that kind of stuff. So we took samples out of a lot of that. Surprisingly, that chapel is owned by St. Michael's High School. Strange combination. Okay, I also worked down at Montezuma's Castle. I guess it's my 2nd or 3rd year down there. We took another set of Archaeomag dates out of Castle B, I guess the burnt structure next to it. We took 21 AMS dates, which came back while I was in the field. God, they're all over the place, but we'll have to see what's going to go on with those. So anyway, I'm trying to sort of screw down the dates on the Montezuma's Castle construction and so forth. Along the Rio Pecos, did a few more old houses in the village of Pecos. A couple more at El Cerrito, and then Ren Thomas of the Utah Archaeological Society got me involved in his wife's relative's place up in Guyena, New Mexico. Very unusual Hispanic architecture from the 1800s. Walls and 2-story buildings, walls entirely of upright junipers, capped with a log beak, cut, sort of capped the whole thing like that. If it was plastered, you'd never know it. You'd call it an adobe building. We're talking junipers like this. The same stuff we saw later this year, this summer, at Beef Basin. Okay, at Cedar Mesa, often government employees and archaeologists don't get much recognition because sometimes they're a real hassle to work with, but others bend over backwards for us. And this guy right here, Don Simonis of the BLM office out of Monticello, is your friend. Okay? That's because he's allowed me to run amok in southeast Utah. But nevertheless, so we finished up 2 projects on Cedar Mesa, one at Picket Fork that I talked about last year, and then the first Slickhorn #1, we finished the Citadel there and mapped it. Typical Mesa Verdean occupation, these pinnacles like the spiral around upstairs, stuff on the top, stuff in the notches below, stuff around the bottom. A real bummer to map, but we got that one, so we're finished with that. We probably have 3 or 4 left in Slickhorn to complete, I guess, before we've done all the major structures there. At least those with wood. Then, that's our 3rd year. This is our 3rd year on Cedar Mesa. Okay? And then we moved over to Beef Basin. A long time ago when I worked up here in the forest, I tried to see that back in the early 70s, and I lost a vehicle in the mountains and walked out. So I've never been back. This year I took my Volvo down there, government vehicles. Anyway, Rudy reported on Beef Basin in 1955 for the University of Utah, Anthropological Papers. It's on the northwest flanks of the Abajo Mountains behind Monticello. 3-hour drive-in, dirt roads, rocks, junk like that. I lost my muffler out there, but it made it a lot easier to go over the rest of the stuff without that hanging off the back anyway. So I just wired up the tailpipe. So we're good. Okay? It's a neat place. Rudy did some work in there. Bill Light strolled through. People have taken a few samples, treating samples from there. It's not real wood-rich like I prefer. But it does avoid the 500, 700, 1,000-foot canyons that we've been dealing with over in Slickhorn. And so it made it real nice for the crews. Wonderful accommodations by the BLM there. We have a cabin. This guy dragged his 3,000-pound water thing down there, water buffalo down for us, which was greatly appreciated. Saved us a lot of time at home, and so forth. They treated us well, and I really like that. I appreciate BLM and Don Simonis for getting these things rolling and protecting our tax. Okay. We did 11 sites in Beef Basin. We finished 9 of them. We worked out there about 10 days, and the maximum crew was 13, and the smallest end of the scale was 4 after most of the people deserted us and left. We didn't get stuck down there. We had no problems, hardly any rain. It was gorgeous. Mostly occupied in the late 1100s, early 1200s, McElmo phase period. Almost all the prehistoric stuff is McElmo phase down there. It's very similar in occupation to what we see in the San Juan Basin and Chaco areas and other marginal areas. You see them climbing up these pinnacles. You see them on top of these inaccessible little tiny buttes and stuff. There's open air sites. I mean, it's a real mishmash of kinds of structures down there. There's some towers down there, like Hovenweep. 3 towers at least. We did 2 of them. 3-story towers. We established line of sight between a couple of them that we couldn't see in the woods. Used flares, you know, they work. Didn't start any fires. Strobe lights, you know, we got it connected. Very neat place. It's sort of an enclosed basin. It's surrounded by mesas and peaks and things like that. We had lots of storm activity, but almost none of it touched us. It just went all around us all the time. So for a steady area, you know, for long term, it's a wonderful place. Okay. Lots of defensive stuff in there for the sites. Typical marginal occupation I see in the late 1100s and 1200s out there in the Four Corners region. There's some Navajo stuff in there. I was particularly intrigued by one site. As far as I know, it didn't have a site number yet, right? You don't know. Okay. Anyway, I'm intrigued by that Navajo site because it looks identical to stuff that Peter McKenna and I have been working on in Chaco Canyon. 1700 Navajo site. The form's right. The type 1 type masonry, like you see in Pablo Benito, is right. The door is right. Where the ash thing was, there wasn't a single artifact on that. And against my normal policy, it didn't have any wood either. But we mapped it anyway. So a couple of Navajo sites down there. And, you know, it's, to me, 1700s is sort of out of norm. We're sort of on the north end of what we might expect out there. So, you know, I don't know what we can do to verify it, but that's what it looked like to me. What else is there? The main reason to be out there is Mr. Turner. Mr. Turner moved into the basin in the late 1800s. Drove cattle, built a cabin in there, and had some influence. As far as I can tell, he's probably the only white guy out there for a long time. It's neat because it's a closed system and we can use this example of what he did there to prehistoric stuff. Okay? He built a cabin. We inventoried that cabin this year. 3 rooms, something in the neighborhood, because I haven't quite finished yet with the corral and the 3 rooms and the posts and everything else, 450 pieces of wood. Okay? The main log cabin is like what you see elsewhere, horizontal logs, pitched roof, but central vigas, and secondaries across that. Most of the main cabin, Douglas fir, which I really like. Doug fir is your tree, folks. Talk about them. Not a lot of Douglas fir around the Beef Basin, but there's some. The early reports on what came out of there said the cabin probably he hauled in these members. The biggest beam in the cabin is this thick. The bottom base beams. Now, Mr. Turner intrigued people because he was out potting around one year in 1896, and in the cave around the corner from his place, this rock shelter, of which we did 2 of them, heavily sooted. It looks like deep deposits, almost no cultural debris, although a fair number of corn cobs, a couple of obelisk gray-looking things, a couple of Yamo-looking things, a storage granary that was in there that we sampled, probably dating from the 1200s. Sooted all to hell. I mean, it's like they baked the thing inside there. So I think that thing goes back a ways. There's one little basket maker looking thing in the back. Really, there's not much to it. But Mr. Turner dug out a cooking vessel out of there. And inside he found this. This exquisite blanket, 5 feet by 5 feet, was sealed inside this vessel. Okay? And then it went on the road. It now is in the Telluride Ski Area Museum. And so Winston Hurst and Fred Blackburn and other ones did some reverse archaeology a few years ago to try to find out where that blanket came from. And they finally, it's been a lot of controversy about where it came, but Turner found it, okay? And it ended up in Telluride. And finally that shelter that we mapped this summer is where that pot came from. So they're of course interested. There was no site number on that thing yet, so we mapped the whole thing and so forth, did the wood on it, the usual. So I don't know what that's going to add to the blanket. There's also a cliff going around the corner from his cabin that had a couple beams in it, and there was some speculation in the old days the blanket came out of there, but seeing how it's built on bedrock, that seems unusually no, because the deposit that pot was found in is pretty deep. It's got to be that shelter. So anyway, so we're going after things in there. The cabin is interesting. The other two rooms are made up upright posts, big juniper posts. I mean, again, like this, just like I saw over Guyana. The ones on top, they had closing pole, bonding beam on top of each wall there. The vigas, the rafters, and all the horizontal logs in the cabin. And all the other major beams were Douglas fir, and then the junipers were made for walls. And then there's a corral next door, about 10 feet away. I don't know, there's 150 of these things in there. We haven't finished that. And a lot of wood. But as we were wandering around looking at things, I noticed there's stumps everywhere. Stumpology, folks, this is where it's at now. You know, give up your shirts, give up your lithics, go to this. So, I split out some of the wood rats, the crew of 3, all men of course, because they were hot to trot, and I sent them out there. They did a square mile. I had them out there for 4 days, inventorying every stump in the area. Now this sounds funny, doesn't it? But you know, a lot of axe cut stuff. Actually, we found one stone axe cut stump under the cave where it's protected. So it'll be interesting. We sampled it. We sampled a number of the stumps, not very many. We inventoried 143 stumps out there, including the limbs that were cut off. And I think that total is not too far off of what we're going to see in that cabin. So, and we plotted them all, GPS'd them all, and all that. And there's some nice clustering out there in the woods where he is. It seems like there's a number of clusters along the washes. And you got to look at these stuff and wonder how these guys got this stuff in here. I mean, it was a hell of a job cutting that stuff. I mean, I can't believe it. So maybe they were doing it in the winter and sliding along the bottom of the washes or something. I don't know. The Doug fir was thought to be brought in because it was huge. You look around close right there, and there's, well, actually, there's one Doug fir above the cabin. But about a half-mile way up on House Mesa, just around the corner from the cabin, we spotted a whole grove of Douglas firs upstairs. 700 feet up. So I sent the crew up there. We inventoried all those. There's about 50 live Douglas firs, all kinds of ages. Some of those guys are like this. Now I know the chronology, the treating with chronology in Beef Basin isn't great. So we sampled a couple of those live ones, full of sap. God, what a mess that was. But I got some quarters this long out of it. So I'm hoping at least historically we'll get a good record out of it. I'm trying to build up the chances of us getting good treating dates out of there. Okay? We sampled a number of the down ones. They were definitely saw cut and steel axe cut Doug firs up there. And I mean, some of them were like this. All those beams almost certainly came out of there. How they got those things down there without killing each other, I have no idea. The beams are not ground down as if you drive them down. They're not all bent up as if you threw them over the side. And hauling them down by hand, oh man, I don't know how they did it. But the related factor here is a lot of the wood out in those prehistoric ruins is also Douglas fir. And I'm pretty sure those stands have been there for 2,000 years. That's the kind of place where you see them. There's one more grove we haven't checked out around the next mesa. But you can see the ties, the historic ties. What would a Native American do if he's going to go out there and collect wood, and where would he be getting it? So, you know, we're going after those stumps. It's a cultural modified tree, folks. You know? Just because it's cut down with a saw doesn't make it uninteresting. And when fires happen, you guys in your historic areas, you know, you lose all that. Okay, so you know, here we go. Saw cut. But there's a lot you can learn from that. And we're going to go back and we're going to get more stumps. I'm going to drive those guys into the ground. We're going to get them all. So it's a very neat area. Not yet.
I'm keeping time.
Okay, well, I don't know, that sort of covers it. Most of the stuff we mapped was McElmo phase stuff, mostly open sites. We did a couple cliff ruins. We got more inside. Fable Valley, which is another one of those big, stinking, deep canyons, is on the edge of it. And we went in there earlier in May and checked them both out, Deep Basin and Fable Valley. So we'll probably go back into Fable Valley and try that too. I mean, some of the climbs, the wheels were off the ground. The rock is like, the road is like this, folks, this high, climbing up rocks with your vehicle. Not my Volvo. I draw a line there. But, you know, we can get in and out of some of these places. It's a wonderful world. Okay, academics should be sort of interested in that.